Ladies and gentlemen, silence is a form of strength. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of self-control. It is the ability to stand in a world that glorifies noise and still remain grounded within your own energy. When a person learns to be silent, they begin to understand the difference between reaction and response, between impulsive emotion and deliberate thought. Silence teaches patience, and patience reveals wisdom. In silence, you learn to listen not only to others, but to the quiet voice within that often gets buried beneath distractions. Many people mistake silence for weakness. They believe that to be powerful, one must constantly speak, argue, or explain. But true power rarely needs to be proven. The strongest minds are those that can endure misunderstanding without needing to correct everyone. They know that not every opinion deserves a reply, and not every confrontation requires energy. Silence allows space for clarity, and clarity leads to understanding. When you stop defending yourself, you stop giving others control over your emotions. In a world that moves fast, silence becomes a form of rebellion. It allows you to slow down when everything else is rushing forward. It gives you space to reflect before you act, to observe before you speak, and to understand before you judge. The person who can stay silent in chaos holds a kind of calm that no external event can shake. That calm becomes armor, a quiet power that shields you from the noise of other people's opinions. Silence also holds creative energy. Every great idea, every transformation begins in silence. It is in those still moments that thoughts organize themselves, emotions settle, and inspiration is born. When your mind is quiet, it becomes a mirror that reflects truth without distortion. You begin to notice things you once ignored: your patterns, your fears, your desires. You start to see the real reasons behind your reactions, and in that awareness you grow. People who master silence understand timing. They know when to speak and when to hold back. They realize that words carry energy, and careless speech can scatter focus and intention. By staying silent, they preserve the strength of their thoughts until the right moment arrives. Then, when they do speak, their words carry weight because they are backed by stillness and purpose. Silence doesn't mean avoidance, it means control. It means understanding that your attention is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. There is also a healing quality in silence. It allows emotional wounds to close without constant interference. When you stop explaining your pain and simply sit with it, you allow your heart to process and release what words could never fix. Silence brings peace because it disconnects you from the need for validation. It reminds you that you don't have to be seen or heard to be real. You don't have to justify your journey to anyone. You only have to understand it yourself. In relationships, silence can save connections. Arguments often escalate because both sides want to be right instead of being peaceful, but silence invites reflection. It gives room for empathy, for understanding beyond words. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stay quiet, to listen without planning a reply, to give space instead of tension. Silence allows emotions to cool and thoughts to realign. Through it, communication becomes more meaningful and less reactive. The discipline of silence builds inner confidence. When you stop seeking constant validation, your strength begins to grow from within. You no longer depend on others to tell you who you are or what you should do. You become your own anchor, unshaken by the noise outside. That self-assurance does not need to announce itself. It radiates naturally, commanding respect without effort. Silence is not emptiness. It is full of power, wisdom, and presence. It allows you to observe the world without being consumed by it. It teaches you that control does not come from dominating others, but from mastering yourself. The one who controls their tongue, their reaction, and their attention controls their destiny. In that sense, silence is not just a behavior, it is a spiritual discipline, a higher state of awareness. When you embrace silence, you begin to see that not everything requires an answer, not every situation needs your energy, and not every battle is worth fighting. Silence becomes your filter. It keeps what matters and releases what doesn't. It is the foundation of focus, the companion of wisdom, and the language of strength. Through silence, you gain the rare ability to move through life with peace, clarity, and unshakable inner power. Energy flows where attention goes. a phrase that captures the invisible mechanism of human focus and creation. Wherever the mind lingers, life responds. It's not merely a poetic line, it's an unseen law that governs behavior, emotion, and even the shape of destiny. Every thought, every moment of concentration carries a subtle force. That force becomes direction, and direction becomes outcome. The mind is not a passive observer of reality, but an active participant in it, constantly shaping, molding, and rearranging what unfolds. When you fix your attention on something, you give it life. You water it with awareness. The object of focus grows stronger and more vivid, while everything outside that focus fades into the background. This is why people who constantly dwell on problems often find themselves surrounded by more of them, while those who train their gaze on solutions begin to see doors where others see walls. The current of energy follows the riverbed of attention. What you notice multiplies, what you ignore dissolves. The mind, by its nature, is restless. It wanders like light refracted through a prism, scattering in many directions. Yet when you bring that light into a single beam, it burns through obstacles. Focus transforms potential into power. When you concentrate deeply, whether on a task, a vision, or an emotion, you ignite the subtle field of energy that governs experience. That's why people who live with purpose radiate a certain magnetism. They are not wasting their power on distraction or doubt. They have learned that to control attention is to control the creative flow of life itself. Every emotion, too, is shaped by attention. Fear expands when it's fed. Peace deepens when it's felt. The moment you attend to anger, it gathers strength. When you attend to gratitude, it blooms. Attention is the channel through which energy moves from thought into reality. The more intensely you hold something in awareness, the more substance it gains in the unseen layers of your mind. Slowly, it begins to manifest in actions, words, and choices. You start to become what you repeatedly think about. When people say they feel drained, it is often not because they lack energy, but because their attention is scattered. The human mind leaks energy through worry, comparison, regret, and distraction. Each unnecessary thought steals a fragment of your vitality. But when you bring your awareness back into your breath, your body, or your present moment, you begin to reclaim that scattered power. Energy returns when the mind stops wandering. The practice of focus is not just mental discipline, it is energetic conservation. Imagine attention as sunlight. When spread thin, it warms gently but changes little. When concentrated through a lens, it becomes a flame. In the same way, when your mental energy is aligned with clarity and direction, your life becomes luminous. The more deliberate your focus, the more potent your creation. You can't grow what you don't give light to. You can't change what you refuse to look at. Your attention is the currency of transformation, and how you spend it determines the quality of your existence. This principle extends beyond individual thought into the collective. Societies evolve according to where their collective attention rests. When a culture celebrates material success above inner growth, it channels its collective energy toward consumption and competition. When people turn their awareness inward, toward understanding, empathy, and self-mastery, the energy of the entire society shifts. The invisible becomes visible through shared attention. To direct attention consciously is to awaken a creative power that is usually asleep. Most people drift from one distraction to another, unaware that they are giving their energy to things that do not serve them. But when you begin to watch where your attention goes, you start to realize that you are not powerless. You are the one deciding what to energize. You can pull your awareness away from chaos and feed it into peace. You can withdraw from fear and pour that same energy into courage. Each shift in attention is a shift in energy, and each shift in energy is a shift in life itself. Energy flows where attention goes, and so the quality of your inner world becomes the foundation of your outer one. Focus on what is missing, and you amplify lack. Focus on what is present, and you amplify abundance. Life mirrors the vibration of your awareness. When you learn to hold your attention with care, you discover that your thoughts are not small. They are threads of creation, weaving the fabric of your experience moment by moment. Energy flows where attention goes, a statement that reveals the hidden current beneath all human experience. Whatever occupies your awareness begins to gather strength. Your thoughts are not static. Privacy protects progress. It is the invisible shelter within which ideas grow, strength is restored, and purpose is refined. Every seed needs darkness before it reaches the light. The same is true for the human spirit. Growth demands a space untouched by noise, judgment, and interference. Privacy is not isolation. It is the boundary that allows transformation to take place without distortion. It guards the delicate process of becoming before the world is ready to see it. When something is still forming, it is vulnerable. A thought, an idea, a vision. Each begins as a fragile spark that can easily be extinguished by the winds of opinion or distraction. Privacy provides the stillness in which that spark can grow into fire. It shields the mind from the premature exposure that often kills inspiration. What is shared too early becomes tangled in the expectations and doubts of others. But what is protected, nourished quietly, and allowed to mature in silence develops a foundation strong enough to withstand the world's scrutiny. The mind requires solitude to refine clarity. When you guard your inner world, you give your thoughts the freedom to evolve naturally instead of being shaped by external influence. Constant exposure to others' judgments can dilute conviction and weaken creativity. Privacy gives you the strength to form authentic beliefs, to know what you truly think, want, and value before it is compared, copied, or criticized. In that private space, confidence takes root. You begin to trust your instincts instead of waiting for validation. Progress in any form demands a certain level of secrecy. A person working quietly moves without resistance. The absence of an audience removes pressure. It allows experimentation, mistakes, and discovery without the fear of being watched or misunderstood. Privacy becomes the workshop of the soul where growth happens in raw form, unpolished and real. It is in these unseen moments that vision turns into reality, discipline replaces distraction, and dreams transform into structure. Every meaningful journey begins behind closed doors. The writer with a blank page, the artist before an unfinished canvas, the thinker lost in reflection. All require solitude to shape something that will one day reach others. Privacy provides the distance between creation and exposure, allowing one to cultivate depth before seeking recognition. It acts as the guardian of authenticity, ensuring that progress arises from genuine intention rather than public reaction. In a world that celebrates constant sharing, privacy has become rare and misunderstood. Many equate it with secrecy or detachment, yet it is neither. It is the quiet assertion of control over one's inner energy. It is the refusal to let the noise of the crowd drown the whisper of intuition. When you learn to keep certain things to yourself, your plans, your emotions, your next steps, you preserve their power. You protect them from being drained by unnecessary explanation or external doubt. Privacy also nurtures mental stability. When you are not performing for others, your actions become sincere. You are able to work from alignment rather than impression. This internal focus strengthens emotional resilience. You stop chasing applause and start chasing improvement. The mind becomes sharper, the heart calmer. The absence of external distraction gives you time to listen to yourself, to recalibrate, and to move with purpose. In relationships, privacy maintains respect. It sets the boundary between connection and intrusion. Even closeness thrives on the understanding that some parts of one's journey must remain personal. When people overexpose their lives, they invite chaos into what should remain sacred. Privacy builds dignity. It teaches restraint and mystery, both of which preserve the depth of human connection. In moments of quiet protection, progress accelerates, ideas mature, habits solidify, and identity becomes whole. The world often mistakes visibility for value, yet the most transformative work often happens unseen. The sculptor's masterpiece is not formed under the gaze of a crowd, but in long, silent hours of private refinement. The same truth applies to personal growth. It unfolds in silence, away from eyes that might not yet understand it. Privacy, therefore, is not about hiding. It is about preserving the purity of process. It is the invisible guardian of focus, discipline, and creativity. Within its walls, a person is free to build, to fail, to learn, and to rise again without interference. When guarded carefully, it becomes a sacred space where potential turns into reality, where progress takes its first breath before stepping into the light. The mind confuses talk with achievement. It mistakes the satisfaction of speaking about something for the fulfillment of actually doing it. Words give the illusion of movement, a sense that progress is happening, even when nothing has truly changed. The mind finds comfort in this illusion because talk feels safe. It allows one to imagine success without facing the uncertainty or effort that real action demands. This is why so many ideas remain trapped in the realm of discussion, why so many dreams fade before they even begin. The energy that should be used for execution is spent on conversation, leaving only the echo of intention behind. When we talk about what we want to do, the brain releases a small surge of satisfaction. It feels as though the goal has already been touched. The mind rewards itself prematurely, mistaking imagination for realization. This false sense of accomplishment can be powerful enough to keep a person idle. It is the trap of mental comfort, planning endlessly, explaining repeatedly, visualizing constantly, but never moving beyond words. The talk becomes the substitute for the journey, and the more one speaks, the less one acts. Talking is effortless. Doing requires risk, sacrifice, and exposure. The mind loves control, and words provide that. In talking, there is no failure, no unpredictability, no resistance. But in action, there is friction, the kind that refines character and strengthens resolve. True progress only begins when thought crosses into effort, when intention translates into consistent practice. Yet the mind resists this transition because it threatens its comfort. It would rather stay in the illusion of progress than face the vulnerability of trying. The human tendency to overtalk stems from the desire for validation. We want others to know our plans, our visions, our goals, hoping their reactions will affirm our worth. But every time we seek that approval through words, we release a part of our creative energy. The mind, feeling acknowledged, relaxes its urgency to act. The goal begins to fade into the background, replaced by the pleasure of being seen as ambitious. Slowly, motivation dissolves in the comfort of self-praise. Talking becomes a ritual that replaces doing. This confusion between speech and progress affects not just individuals but entire cultures. Modern life rewards visibility over depth. People are encouraged to declare, announce, and display rather than to build quietly. The noise of constant communication replaces the silence of craftsmanship. In the rush to speak, many forget that real achievement is born in stillness, repetition, and solitude. It grows in the quiet hours when no one is watching, when the only witness is discipline itself. The mind's addiction to talk also reveals its fear of silence. Silence exposes truth. It reveals what has not been done, what still remains unresolved. Talking covers that discomfort. It allows one to hide from accountability. But silence, though uncomfortable, is honest. It demands reflection and choice. It confronts the gap between what is said and what is done. Those who learn to sit in that silence, to feel the discomfort without escaping into words, begin to awaken the strength required for real change. Action, unlike talk, demands commitment. It asks for consistency when enthusiasm fades, for patience when results are slow. The mind, however, is restless. It prefers the instant gratification of conversation to the long, uncertain path of persistence. To act is to surrender control, to step into a process where outcomes are unknown. That uncertainty threatens the ego, so it replaces the struggle of creation with the ease of expression. But expression without execution is empty. It fills time without moving life forward. When people stop talking about what they will do and begin doing it, their entire mental landscape shifts. Energy that was once scattered through words becomes focused through movement. The gap between imagination and reality begins to close. Each small action replaces the illusion of progress with genuine momentum. The satisfaction that follows is deeper, quieter, and more enduring than any applause or validation. It is the inner peace that comes from alignment, when what you say and what you do finally match. The mind's confusion between talk and achievement is one of its greatest tricks. It whispers that preparation is progress, that discussion is motion, that intention alone is enough. But achievement requires silence, effort, and time. It demands the courage to leave behind the safety of words and enter the uncertainty of doing. The mind must be trained to see talk for what it is, a starting point, not an accomplishment. Only then can energy shift from illusion to creation, from noise to results, from empty expression to real progress. External opinions distort inner clarity. The human mind is a mirror, reflecting what it absorbs from the world around it. When too many voices speak at once, that mirror becomes clouded, and it becomes difficult to distinguish one's own reflection from the impressions of others. The moment we begin to rely on external approval to confirm our direction, we surrender the compass of intuition. Clarity fades not because we are incapable of knowing, but because the noise of opinions drowns out the quiet truth that exists within. Every person carries within them a unique sense of understanding, a deep, instinctive awareness that quietly guides choices and responses. This inner knowing is delicate. It requires stillness to be heard and trust to be followed. Yet, from an early age, we are conditioned to look outward for confirmation. We are taught to measure our worth, intelligence, and success through the eyes of others. Over time, this habit becomes internalized, and the mind begins to confuse external validation with truth. The opinions of others seep into thought until they shape not just decisions, but identity itself. When external opinions dominate, self-doubt begins to take root. A person starts to question their instincts, second-guessing every impulse in fear of judgment. What once felt natural becomes a struggle between authenticity and acceptance. The mind tries to please instead of express, to adapt instead of lead. In this state, inner clarity, the ability to see, feel, and act from truth, becomes obscured. One's perception is filtered through the expectations of others, and the more one listens to those voices, the less one remembers their own. The influence of external opinions is subtle yet powerful. They shape behavior without direct command. A simple comment, an assumption, or a glance of disapproval can shift a person's entire sense of direction. The mind, seeking belonging, absorbs these cues and adjusts accordingly. But belonging built on compliance weakens individuality. The more we mold ourselves to fit, the further we drift from the core of who we are. It is a quiet erosion, one that happens not through force, but through gradual surrender. Clarity requires solitude. It demands moments of withdrawal from the constant evaluation of others. When we disconnect from noise, we rediscover our natural rhythm. Silence has a way of realigning thought with truth. In stillness, the mind begins to differentiate between what it truly feels and what it has been told to feel. This process can be uncomfortable because it often reveals how much of our identity is borrowed. Yet it is through that discomfort that self-understanding deepens. The modern world magnifies this challenge, with endless opinions available at every turn through media, conversation, and digital noise. The mind rarely rests in its own company. People measure themselves not through reflection, but through comparison. Each scroll, each comment, each headline becomes another voice intruding upon the space of clarity. In this atmosphere, authenticity becomes diluted. The mind becomes reactive, constantly adjusting to the shifting tides of public perception instead of anchoring itself in inner conviction. When clarity fades, decisions lose meaning. Choices made under the influence of external pressure rarely bring peace. They may satisfy the surface need for approval, but leave the deeper self restless. This restlessness is the soul's way of signaling that something essential has been ignored. True direction arises not from collective opinion, but from the quiet alignment between thought, feeling, and intuition. To hear it, one must first step back from the world's conversation and listen inwardly. External opinions also distort perception by attaching value to outcomes rather than process. People begin to act not from curiosity or purpose, but from fear of disapproval. Creativity becomes imitation, Confidence turns into performance. The essence of growth, experimenting, failing, learning, gets replaced by the pressure to appear correct. In trying to be acceptable, one forgets to be real. The pursuit of acceptance becomes a subtle form of self-betrayal. Inner clarity cannot coexist with constant comparison. It thrives in authenticity, in the courage to trust one's own insight, even when it is misunderstood. The more one depends on others to define what is right or worthy, the more fragile the sense of self becomes. Clarity comes from alignment, not agreement. It arises when you stop chasing approval and begin listening to your own rhythm, when you learn that truth does not require consensus to exist. To protect inner clarity, one must treat it as something sacred. It is the foundation upon which understanding, peace, and strength are built. Without it, life becomes an echo of other people's ideas. With it, even solitude feels whole. The mind must be trained to hear its own voice above the noise, to trust the quiet knowing that does not shout but simply knows. In that trust lies the essence of freedom, and from that freedom, true clarity is born. Growth requires solitude. It is within the quiet spaces of life that transformation takes root, away from the noise of expectation and the distraction of constant interaction. Solitude is not loneliness. It is the fertile ground where the self meets itself. It is the state in which thoughts are unmasked, emotions are understood, and purpose begins to take form. In silence, you begin to hear what the world often drowns out, the voice of your own becoming. Without solitude, growth remains shallow, dependent on the rhythms and opinions of others. With it, evolution becomes authentic, deliberate, and deeply personal. When you step into solitude, the outer world fades, and the inner one expands. The mind, no longer occupied by noise and reaction, starts to observe itself. It begins to see its own patterns, its fears, its attachments, its illusions. Growth starts here, in this confrontation with the self. What once seemed external, problems, conflicts, limitations, begins to reveal its roots within. The mind becomes both the student and the teacher, learning to understand itself through the silence that solitude provides. Solitude is the workshop of the soul. It allows reflection without interruption and teaches patience through stillness. Every moment of quiet is a mirror reflecting who you truly are beneath the performance of daily life. When you are constantly surrounded by people, your energy adjusts to fit the collective rhythm. You absorb their emotions, opinions, and expectations until your own identity becomes entangled with theirs. But when you withdraw into solitude, you begin to untangle those threads. You rediscover what is yours, your feelings, your dreams, your boundaries. This self-recognition is the seed of all meaningful growth. The world often misunderstands solitude as isolation, yet it is the opposite. Isolation disconnects, solitude reconnects. It reconnects you with your essence, your creativity, and your purpose. It allows you to recharge the energy that constant exposure depletes. Growth requires this renewal. Just as a tree must have seasons of stillness to strengthen its roots, a person must retreat into silence to deepen their understanding. Without these pauses, life becomes mechanical, repetitive, and reactive. Solitude breaks that cycle and restores depth to experience. In solitude, distractions lose their grip. The need for validation fades and awareness sharpens. You start to question what truly matters, not what looks good or sounds right, but what feels aligned. This questioning leads to clarity, and clarity is the beginning of growth. You begin to see what habits drain you, what thoughts limit you, and what attachments keep you small. Solitude gives you the courage to face those truths without escape. It is in that confrontation that strength begins to form. Growth also demands discomfort, and solitude often brings it. When you are alone, there is nowhere to hide from your emotions. The mind resists at first, seeking distraction or company to escape the unease. But if you stay long enough in that stillness, you begin to see that discomfort is not the enemy. It is the signal of transformation. It shows you where healing is needed and where freedom is possible. Every moment spent in quiet honesty expands awareness, and through awareness you evolve. Great clarity often arrives in solitude. Ideas surface that were once buried beneath the weight of conversation. Insights emerge naturally when thought is not constantly influenced by the world's chatter. Creativity thrives in this space because solitude removes the pressure to perform. You create not to be seen, but to express what is real within you. This authenticity fuels growth more than any external praise ever could. Solitude also teaches emotional independence. It shows that peace does not depend on company or approval. When you learn to find comfort in your own presence, you stop chasing it from others. This freedom transforms how you relate to the world. You no longer seek completion through attachment, but connection through wholeness. Growth, then, becomes not an escape from loneliness, but a mastery of self. The process of solitude refines intention. It strips away the unnecessary, leaving only what is essential. You begin to see life more clearly, to act more purposefully, to speak more truthfully. The time spent alone shapes your inner foundation so that when you re-enter the world, you bring depth, balance, and strength. You are no longer reactive to your environment, but guided by your own understanding. Growth requires solitude because the journey inward cannot be shared. Others may inspire, guide, or support, but no one can walk within your mind except you. The silence of solitude becomes the companion that never lies, the teacher that never flatters, and the space where truth is revealed. It is the sacred ground upon which transformation unfolds, not loudly, not quickly, but quietly, in the timeless rhythm of becoming. What is sacred must be guarded. The sacred exists in the deepest parts of life, those places where meaning, truth, and beauty reside beyond the noise of the world. It may be a principle, a relationship, a vision, or an inner peace that gives life its quiet strength. Yet the sacred by its nature is fragile when exposed. It does not thrive under constant scrutiny, nor can it survive in the chaos of distraction and intrusion. What is sacred must be protected not out of fear, but out of reverence. It is the recognition that certain things lose their purity when overexposed, that some truths require silence, and that not everything precious should be shared or explained. The sacred is whatever connects you to authenticity. It may appear in moments of solitude, in the honesty of your thoughts, in the stillness of your emotions, or in the integrity of your values. These are not things to be paraded or displayed, because their power comes from their privacy. When you speak too freely of what is sacred, it becomes vulnerable to misunderstanding, judgment, and dilution. The sacred holds its meaning in depth, and depth cannot survive in shallow waters. Guarding it means preserving that depth from being scattered or consumed by the trivial. To guard what is sacred is to create boundaries around what nourishes your spirit. The world often demands exposure, encourages oversharing, and celebrates visibility over essence. But not all light is meant for display. The flame of the sacred burns brightest in spaces of stillness and respect. When you guard it, you protect your focus, your energy, and your connection to what is real. You begin to understand that preservation is an act of love. Love for the truth that sustains you, and for the silence that allows it to grow. What is sacred also lives within relationships, the bonds built on trust, the words shared in confidence, the emotions revealed in vulnerability. These connections are sacred because they are built on sincerity and mutual respect. To guard them means to honor what has been entrusted to you, to protect the intimacy that allows two souls to meet without pretense. When such spaces are exposed to gossip, manipulation, or carelessness, they lose their strength. The sacred withers when it is treated casually, because its essence is not in ownership but in respect. The same principle applies to dreams and visions. When you are nurturing something meaningful, a goal, an idea, a transformation, it begins as something sacred within you. It exists in a delicate stage, easily influenced by doubt and external opinion. To guard it means to keep it safe from the voices that do not understand it. Not everyone can see what you see, and not everyone should. In the early stages of creation, what is sacred needs silence to take form, to develop its roots before facing the winds of judgment. Those who reveal too much too soon often find their dreams weakened by noise and interference. Guarding the sacred is also about maintaining inner integrity. It means not allowing the outer world to corrupt what you hold true. In a world of distraction, it is easy to trade authenticity for acceptance, or to compromise values for convenience. But when you guard what is sacred within, you refuse to let external forces rewrite your truth. You protect the essence of your being, the quiet conviction that defines who you are when no one is watching. This silent loyalty to oneself is the foundation of inner strength. The sacred is not always grand or dramatic. It can be found in small moments, a morning thought, a creative spark, a word unspoken, or a feeling of calm that arises without reason. These moments are threads of connection between the seen and unseen, between your outer life and your inner reality. To guard them is to resist the temptation to turn everything meaningful into performance. Not every emotion needs an audience. Not every realization needs a witness. Some truths gain power by being lived, not spoken. To guard the sacred is also to practice discernment, to know what deserves your attention and what does not. When you treat everything as sacred, nothing truly is. But when you choose carefully, when you give your energy only to what uplifts and aligns, your life begins to reflect that reverence. The act of guarding transforms into a form of devotion. It is a commitment to purity amidst chaos, depth amidst noise, and peace amidst pressure. What is sacred must be guarded because it carries the essence of your humanity. It is the invisible foundation of meaning beneath the surface of daily life. To guard, it is to honor what cannot be measured or replaced. It is to recognize that the sacred, once lost or corrupted, cannot be easily restored. In that protection lies wisdom, the understanding that not all treasures are meant to be shared, that silence can be a form of strength, and that reverence is the highest expression of love for what truly matters. Quiet confidence speaks louder than words. It is the steady presence that needs no announcement, the calm strength that does not demand recognition. True confidence is not loud or boastful. It moves softly, grounded in self-awareness rather than performance. It is the energy that fills a room without effort, the composure that endures without the need to prove. Where arrogance shouts for attention, quiet confidence simply exists, unbothered by validation. It is a reflection of inner certainty, the kind that grows from knowing who you are, not from convincing others of it. Quiet confidence is built in silence, through experience, discipline, and self-trust. It comes from facing challenges privately and emerging stronger without the need for applause. It is earned in the moments when no one is watching, when you choose persistence over complaint and focus over comparison. Those who possess it do not feel compelled to display it because they understand that real strength doesn't rely on recognition. They move through the world with an ease that comes from self-alignment, the understanding that worth is not something to be proven, but something to be lived. This kind of confidence carries a stillness that commands respect. It is not built on dominance but on presence. When a person is quietly confident, others feel it instinctively. There is no desperation in their tone, no need to control or compete. Their calm becomes magnetic because it reflects control over emotion and clarity of purpose. People are drawn to that steadiness in a world full of noise. It reassures, inspires, and influences without force. Quiet confidence speaks through energy rather than expression. It does not declare, it demonstrates. Those who are quietly confident listen more than they speak. They are not threatened by silence because silence does not make them invisible. In fact, it strengthens their awareness. They do not rush to fill space with noise, for they understand that their value is not measured by how much they say, but by how much they embody. Their restraint reflects mastery, not the absence of words, but the wisdom to know when words are unnecessary. Every action becomes intentional, every gesture deliberate. The power of quiet confidence lies in its subtlety. To reach this state, one must move beyond insecurity and ego. The insecure need attention to feel alive. The confident find peace in solitude. The ego seeks validation. Self-trust seeks truth. Quiet confidence grows when you stop competing for approval and start living by internal standards. It is shaped by integrity, doing what is right, not what is recognized. When you no longer depend on external praise, you free yourself from the instability of opinion. You become grounded in something unshakable, self-respect. Quiet confidence also comes from acceptance. It is not the denial of weakness, but the understanding of it. It does not hide imperfection. It embraces it as part of authenticity. Those who are quietly confident are comfortable in their own skin. They do not need to pretend or perform because they are no longer running from themselves. Their calm is not indifference, but balance. They have learned that peace is more powerful than pride, and that silence often reveals more strength than speech ever could. In a world that rewards visibility, quiet confidence is rare. Many believe that to be seen, they must be loud. Yet it is often the quiet ones who make the deepest impact. Their influence endures because it comes from substance, not spectacle. Every revelation invites reaction. The moment truth is uncovered, it disturbs the equilibrium of what was once familiar. Revelation is not just the discovery of something new. It is the exposure of what was hidden, the shifting of perception, the breaking of illusion. When something once concealed comes to light, it does not remain neutral. It demands acknowledgement, resistance, or transformation. Every truth, no matter how subtle, carries a force that challenges comfort. It ripples through the mind, through relationships, through the very structure of belief. The reaction it invites may be acceptance, denial, curiosity, or fear, but reaction is inevitable. Revelation has a way of changing the air around it. It disrupts the patterns that people build to sustain their sense of certainty. When new understanding arrives, it unsettles the old framework of thought. The human mind clings to the familiar, even when it no longer serves truth. So when a revelation emerges, whether about the world, another person, or oneself, it often meets resistance. People defend what they have known, not necessarily because it is right, but because it feels safe. The revelation does not destroy stability, it reveals that stability was an illusion all along. Every act of seeing more clearly comes with consequence. When the light grows brighter, shadows become more visible. Awareness expands, but so does responsibility. Once something is seen, it cannot be unseen. Revelation calls for response. It asks, "Now that you know, what will you do?" Some people turn away, wishing they had remained ignorant. Others embrace it, allowing it to reshape them. Reaction in this sense becomes the measure of growth. How one responds to truth reveals the depth of one's character. Revelation also stirs emotion. It can inspire awe, fear, or liberation, depending on how deeply it strikes the heart. A revelation about love might heal what was broken. A revelation about betrayal might break what seemed whole. Truth always moves energy. It exposes the hidden motives, the quiet patterns, the silent agreements that shape our lives. It demands honesty, and honesty demands courage. This is why revelation feels heavy. It carries the weight of change. Even when the truth sets one free, it often first dismantles the world that existed before it. When revelation occurs in the collective sense, within society or culture, it can ignite revolution or resistance. History has shown that new ideas, when revealed, often face opposition from those who benefit from the old order. Every revelation challenges authority, exposes weakness, and redefines meaning. It disrupts the flow of comfort, yet this is how evolution unfolds, through the tension between revelation and reaction. Without that friction, no transformation would ever take place. Humanity grows not by avoiding discomfort, but by learning to endure it in the name of understanding. On a personal level, revelation is the turning point between who we were and who we might become. It reveals blind spots and truths about our own nature. These internal revelations, about fear, desire, purpose, or limitation, demand introspection. The reaction they invite is often internal struggle, a conflict between the person we pretend to be and the one we truly are. Some try to silence revelation, convincing themselves that nothing has changed. Others allow it to pierce them, to rearrange their thoughts and reshape their direction. Growth begins the moment the mind stops running from what it has discovered. There is also a rhythm to revelation. It rarely arrives when expected. It strikes suddenly, in a word, a moment, a loss, a realization. It comes when the mind is ready to receive what it once could not bear to see. And when it arrives, it doesn't simply inform, it transforms. It alters perception, not through instruction, but through direct experience. The reaction may be confusion at first, then clarity, then surrender. The process of understanding a revelation is not instant. It unfolds over time as the mind adjusts to its new horizon. Revelation tests relationships too. When one person sees what another refuses to see, distance forms. Truth creates separation as often as it creates connection. It forces each person to stand in their own awareness. Some will react with openness, others with defense. But in both cases, the reaction reveals the level of readiness for truth. Not everyone can carry the same light, and revelation exposes that difference. In the quiet aftermath of revelation, a strange stillness appears, the noise of denial fades, and a deeper understanding begins to settle. The reaction, no matter how intense, eventually gives way to assimilation. The new truth finds its place within the mind structure. What once felt disruptive becomes natural. The world reorganizes itself around this new understanding. And then, when the next revelation comes, as it always does, the cycle repeats. Every revelation invites reaction because every act of seeing awakens something dormant. It disturbs before it heals, unsettles before it clarifies, and through that disturbance, consciousness moves closer to its own truth. True power moves silently. It does not announce itself, nor does it seek to be noticed. It does not rush, boast, or demand recognition. It moves with calm assurance, flowing beneath the surface of noise and spectacle. Silence is its strength, and restraint is its language. True power is not in display, it is in control. It knows when to act, when to hold back, and when to let time work on its behalf. Those who possess it understand that influence does not need to shout. The quiet presence of certainty carries more weight than 1,000 declarations. Power that is real does not fear stillness. It has no need to prove itself because it exists independent of validation. Those who chase attention often do so to compensate for what they lack within. But the truly powerful operate in another rhythm, measured, deliberate, and unseen. Their focus is internal, not external. They do not waste energy convincing others of their worth. They spend it refining their purpose. True power understands that the loudest noise often hides the weakest foundation. Silence, on the other hand, speaks of mastery. It signals depth, patience, and awareness. In silence, power gathers force. Just as a storm forms quietly before it strikes, true strength develops in the unseen hours, when no one is watching, when effort is pure and private. The discipline behind quiet power is invisible to the world. It is built in moments of restraint, in decisions made without applause, in sacrifices unnoticed by others. Those who move silently are not driven by recognition, but by alignment. Their actions are rooted in clarity, not emotion. They understand that time is the ultimate revealer, that what is genuine does not need to rush to be seen. True power has no arrogance in it, it carries grace. It moves like nature, steady, inevitable, and free of pretense. Mountains do not announce their strength. Oceans do not explain their depth. They simply exist in quiet magnitude. The same applies to the individual who has cultivated inner strength. Such a person does not speak of power, they embody it. Their presence alone shifts the atmosphere. Their silence is not emptiness, but concentration, a gathering of energy too deep to be wasted on noise. The reason true power moves silently is because it is rooted in awareness, not reaction. Those who act impulsively reveal dependence on external forces, but silence grants perspective. It allows one to see beyond immediate impulses and respond from clarity. In that stillness, choices become deliberate and precise. The silent mind perceives what the restless one misses. Power, in its highest form, does not control others. It controls itself. It is not measured by dominance, but by composure. In the modern world, where visibility is mistaken for influence, the quiet kind of power often goes unnoticed. People confuse volume with impact, exposure with authority. But the truth is, noise fades quickly, while silent strength endures. The one who moves silently cannot be easily read or predicted, and that unpredictability is part of their force. They do not reveal their plans or intentions prematurely. They allow their results to speak in the language of inevitability. This discretion protects their energy from dilution and their vision from interference. True power is also deeply connected to humility. It understands the balance between strength and grace. It recognizes that control is not about domination, but direction. Silence becomes its method of focus. When energy is not wasted in defending or explaining, it can be directed entirely toward creation. This is how quiet power accomplishes more. It channels force where it matters most, rather than scattering it across distraction. There is a sacredness in moving silently. It is a way of honoring process, of trusting that what is being built in private will one day reveal itself through its results. It is the path of those who choose patience over performance. The silent builder, the silent thinker, the silent leader. They work without spectacle, guided by something steady and unshaken. Their silence is not withdrawal but intent. Every movement, every word, every pause serves a purpose. True power does not need to defend itself because it knows its source. It does not seek control over others because it already governs the self. It moves quietly because its roots run deep and its vision reaches far. Like the tide, it advances with inevitability, shaping everything it touches without the need for noise. It may not always be seen, but it is always felt. Its presence is subtle yet undeniable, calm yet commanding. The silence of true power is not emptiness. It is concentration, awareness, and mastery in motion.